So first page is just like a welcome to everybody, and just to kind of let you know that this is a journey and I'm excited for you all to grow personally and professionally. As some perks for this weekend, you all get 40% off on core functional fitness apparel, and you all get 20% off on any goodies in the boutique. So if you find something that you love, we'd love to help you with that. This is a 2-weekend certification, but you do not have to take both weekends. If you just feel like this is a base knowledge, you feel good about that, you want to go run with it, awesome. The weekend 2 is more of a refining of skills. We offer more new moves. I'll show you partner stuff, how to use different props, and then also looking more in depth at the actual pelvic floor muscles. So we go through kind of a slideshow, things like that. So we dig in even deeper. So just kind of we'll smooth out the edges and learn a lot of different movements this weekend and talk about anatomy and things, but then we'll go more richly that second weekend. And that also will be required for you to get the certificate for the actually teaching with this name. Then you can put the logo up on your website and say these are core functional fitness classes to your heart's extent. So awesome. And then anything else as far as this, while we're videoing this, really think about if you have a question, definitely share. So don't feel like, if you have a question or something feels really silly, and definitely say it, because if you're thinking it, someone else is thinking it, and someone else that might be viewing this video will also be thinking it. So let's create a dialogue if necessary. All right, so this weekend will include, tonight will be mainly lecture. I just feel like it works out really nice. You've had a long day. It's nice to just kind of sit back and listen. And then tomorrow morning at 8:15 sharp, so if you want to get here at 8, I'm fine with that. We'll do a practice in the morning. And I really like the idea of combining you guys with a public class, because you guys get to watch a little bit too, other people, and we can kind of talk about what you noticed or what you felt or kind of the dynamic of teaching. Because it's different if I just teach you guys versus if I teach you guys and regular people. You can kind of see a little bit different dynamic. And then afterwards we'll finish up with the lecture, and then it'll be all hands-on the rest of the weekend. So we will be moving and grooving to our heart's extent. So just get ready tomorrow. Bring lots of water, snacks, whatever it is you need to get yourself through the day. All right, awesome. So let's just get down to the nitty-gritty here. What is core functional fitness? So I know we talked a little bit about that, but what I have written there is it's a method that addresses movements, body alignment from the ground up. So when we're looking at a student or we're looking at ourselves, we're looking at, why does this person have this shoulder issue? Or when they lift their arm, one arm looks kind of funky and the other arm maybe looks more normal. Why is that happening? And even, I love it that you're a massage therapist, because we look at it even in massage and we tend to just work on one area of the body, say this is the area of issue. But is it really the area of issue? Everything starts from the roots. When a tree goes rotten, it doesn't start in the trunk of the tree. It doesn't start losing its leaves. It's starting way down in its root system. So really when we look at the body, we want to start looking at the body from the bottom to the top. It can be something as small as a slight turnout in someone's foot that's giving them neck pain. So really starting to look at the body as far as those terms go. When we think about basic function for our lives, I think about classes. Yoga classes are, I feel like, guilty too, as well as, the normal gym, cardio pump kind of thing. We're often taught, perform this way, move this way. But what if you have a back fusion? What if you have a hip replacement? What if your body physically doesn't move that way? How can you do that? So for me, core functional fitness is less about making the movement fit everybody, but rather allowing everybody to experience what the movement is trying to do for them. So what's the purpose of it? Is it to stretch the hamstrings? Is it to stabilize your core? Is it to help them feel their back muscles? What is the purpose of that? That can help us as teachers to start to look at the person rather than the actual pose. And so that's a really important concept. And we're basically looking at, I love this I wrote in there, takes common sense recommendations do not always equal less pain and are not always backed with supportive research that would yield a positive outcome. So that's a quote from Stuart McGill, and he is actually the leading back expert for exercise health in the world right now. And so what he's saying by that is common sense, meaning we're looking at something that, okay, this totally ludicrous movement is supposed to be the best thing for everyone. Absolutely not. Sometimes it's just very basic, very simple, and that's what we want to get back to, is these movements that really matter. I posed a question to a student a couple weeks ago, and I said, you know, she was talking about arm balances and headstands, and I said, well, how do arm balances and headstand bring value to your life? How do they make you a better person? How do they help you do your job better? She had no answer for me, because they didn't. I said, if that's a goal for you personally, I'll help you make that happen. But if it's not going to help your back pain, and it may not help your core, what's the purpose of that? So why are we doing those movements? Now, we can do them for fun, and they can be great things, but are they really functionally necessary? Probably not. I was in a class with Gary Krafskow, who is someone that has amazing yoga therapy research, and he said if you never do down dog and headstand a day in your life ever again, you will be just fine. Okay, so we kind of have this stigma in our head, especially as yoga teachers, that if we're not teaching this way, if we're not doing this, we're not very good. I spent 7 years of my teaching career worried that I was never doing the right thing, because I'd look out and say, oh, they must be doing something right, and they must be better than me because they have all this stuff. But they were doing that fad stuff where it's just like the newest, fastest, hippest thing. I'm looking at the body. That's what you are all here for, to look at the body and say, why? That's what we want to do. That's that common sense. When we look at CFF, or core functional fitness is currently challenging today's wavelength. What yoga might be missing? So you all said you had this question mark in some way, shape, or form. What maybe Zumba is missing? What maybe workouts in the gym is missing, or personal training, or weightlifting? I have several older gentlemen that come to some of our core functional fitness classes here, and they learn how to position themselves to then do some weight stuff at the gym. And I'm fine with that. But I've kind of got them to cut down on how much weight, get rid of the weight belt, because those are usually red flags that you're using too much anyways, and help them really start to address the body making the movement happen versus some apparatus making the movement happen. And so yoga, or core functional fitness here, is totally self-motivated. So you don't need anything else. We will be using a small green ball, but you'll see the really awesome value in that, and that's a super cheap prop for everyone to invest in. So it'll be really fun. All right, so what I came across when I was looking at creating core functional fitness, I kind of started looking at what valued me and what was important to me when I was starting to not really teach Pilates anymore and kind of veer away from the way I was taught how to teach yoga. And I started to come across about 14 things I felt like, wow, okay, I keep saying this stuff over and over again to my students. Okay, these are kind of my principles. And the first one is core health must be determined in terms of back health. Hello, what surrounds the spine? The core. Okay, so this area is so important, and it really will make or break this area of the body. But yet for many of us, and maybe you have this question mark, because I know I did at one time, I'm doing these core moves, I'm in plank or I'm in boat, and yet I feel everything but my core. But yet you don't know how to change it, and even your instructor doesn't know how to change it. So there's this big red flag you know is there, but yet we keep doing the same thing, hoping for different results. And I am so guilty of that. I was there at one point, and this is what kind of led me to that place. So we'll talk about all these principles then. Functionality, 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 functionality. I love that word, but it's really important to me. So I don't want you ever to go out and just use it frivolously after this training. I really want you to feel like you understand what functionality is, and I hope that you do when you leave here. When we think about functionality, we want to think about the function in our body, and are we moving closer towards wellness or further away? So take a moment in your mind and think to yourself, are the things that I am currently involved in, fitness related or not, moving me closer towards wellness or further away? I know there are things in my life I could definitely refine, but I think that's a question we can pose to our students to put the ball back in their court. So we're not always preaching to them, but rather they can start turn the dials in their head and go, okay, you know, every single time I leave the gym and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, my knee hurts the next day. Stop doing it. Or let's look at what you're doing. Maybe you need some adjustments in your body in order to be able to do those things more effectively. There's that function again. It's less about the movement and more about how you're doing and moving in the movement. The next one, look at the core in layers. I love this idea. This is like, for me, how the core just makes so much sense. And when you leave here, you will have the perfect visualization and understanding of the core. We want to think about co-contracting. So we'll get really familiar with this word, or bracing. So you may have been taught, navel to spine. Okay, so I was in a class out in California, and the lady used the word navel to spine, and I'm looking around at the people just kind of through, corners of my eyes, wondering, I wonder if they really know what that means. Suck your navel in, pull your belly in, do nothing, exhale. What does that mean? In all reality, it actually will bring more harm than good to the spine, because you are descending on one particular part of the spine. Think about an hourglass. It's really narrow in the middle and then broads out. So if we're sucking in or naveling into our spine, we're making one part of our spine incredibly vulnerable to the rest of the body. This idea of co-contracting or stiffening, all the muscles stay as is, perfectly designed already, and they just support the spine even more solid, even more stable. Think about a boxer. Would his coach yell to him, navel to spine, as he gets socked in the stomach? Heck no. They understand this beautiful. They solid, right in place, they hunker down, and they're ready for what's ever going to happen next. That's the concept behind that. And again, it's all about spinal health. It's all about back health. Because when we're 60, 70, 80, and 90, we want to be able to have a mobile but yet very stable and healthy spine. It may not be our goal for our 20-year-olds, but we want to help them understand that it should be. All right, finding a healthy neutral. Neutral, neutral, neutral. So I've seen lots of different variations of neutral. And so what we want to think of is neutral from the bottom to the top. And we'll really break this down this weekend, looking at the feet, looking at knees, looking at the pelvis, looking at the tailbone, where my rib cage is, shoulders, scapula, chin, head, neck. All of these different things and the inability to get into neutral there tell us something about the body. And what you'll find, hopefully, by the end of this weekend is you're able to refine your mind's eye and looking out at the general public, and you can start to connect the dots and go, oh, I see this. I wonder if X, Y, and Z. So we're going to do some personal assessments and some group assessments to get those wheels turning a little bit more. And that's, again, that idea of the person, not the pose kind of thing, that, performing. Stability over mobility. Most back injuries do not get better with more mobility. They get better with more stability. So when we're looking at rehabilitation, I'm very fortunate. I have a great relationship with two really great rehab facilities in Hartford and Slinger, and I get referrals all the time for people that have kind of stopped their rehab and need something else. When we think about rehab, we want to think about not just helping one area of the body, but we have to look at the whole body. So if they have one leg injury, why are they only rehabbing one leg? You have two legs, people. And when we think about this idea of stability over mobility, I have a PT friend, and it's like they're on the stability ball and they're doing all this stuff. They can't even stand on their own 2 feet. What are they doing on this thing? Kind of makes sense? Okay, so if someone can't balance in tree pose, why would you put them on a Bosu ball in tree pose? So understanding these body mechanics so that they can be more successful, so that we're not slipping on the ice, so that we are able to really get the most out of these things that we're doing on or off the mat. Motor control training versus the big sloppy movements. So this is what I was talking about when I was saying, what value does the movement really bring you? So if I bring my arms up and down and I do a sun salutation, or I jump back and do a push-up, or whatever it is I do, these grand big movements, if they really have value, they should be helping us and not hurting us. But the reality is that they don't. Think about a baby. A baby first learns to stand before they learn to walk. They learn to walk before they learn how to run. So this idea of motor control training, they have to learn how to use their muscles properly before they go out and do that next big thing. So those baby steps, and I don't like using the word baby steps, but I'm going to use it with you guys, are really essential. So motor control training, so teaching those small, intrinsic little tweaks to people that make a big difference in the end versus just getting the job done. Okay, muscle endurance. What good is a strong muscle if it can't keep up? So the idea of keeping an endurance muscle, that idea of a long, lean muscle versus a short, bulky one. And I think the greatest equation is if you go at the gym, what do you notice about weightlifters? They're really bulky in the biceps, pecs, glutes, and quads. So they're using these big muscles to try to get the job done, but they can never do anything long term. They lift the bar up one time and then they're like, yeah. But then they have these stay-at-home moms that come in and they start doing these things, smaller weights, but more control because they've been taught properly. And they're teaching that to the core muscle rather than these big, really easily accessible ones. So we want to be able to get deeper, closer, and more beneficial. Look at asymmetry. So this has become a big staple, and people have kind of known me for this now, where it's asymmetry is really how we find symmetry. We're taught in yoga to do what? What you do to your right side, you do to your left side. But we have a third side, okay? We typically are one side dominant. And so if you've had an injury, then you're definitely one side dominant. If you always do the same thing to both sides, your weaker side will get stronger, but your stronger side will always get stronger. You will never be in balance. And we're not looking for 100%, okay, perfect. I'm looking for balance within 5 to 15%, okay? We want to get that weaker side up really close to that stronger side, okay? Because the reality is we write with one hand, we type with one hand, we tend to carry things with one arm, or we tend to have a lead leg. But if we can teach ourselves how to bring that other side up to be a little bit more balanced and a little bit more involved, not only does our brain fire better, but our body is just going to feel better overall. And I have not only seen it in my own body to be true, but I have seen it in hundreds and hundreds of people that I've taught, that this idea of asymmetry, 2-to-1 ratio, is so, so critical and so important. So the idea of looking at asymmetry, we're locating the dysfunction in the body, okay? So I noticed in side plank, my right arm is a lot weaker than my left arm. So have everyone go back and do that side plank a second time. They'll appreciate it and notice the difference later on. Do you have to do it in every movement, especially in a yoga class? No. I just pick really important ones that I'm going to do that day that I feel like will service people the best and run the class that way. And then keep reinforcing at home practice, make sure you do that 2-to-1 ratio or go back and work on that weaker side. So 8 and 9 kind of go together. When we think about gravity, gravity affects us every day and we are constantly fighting it. In the fitness industry and in health and in yoga and in anything that you're doing, why don't we see it as a good thing and play it to our advantage? So when we understand the component of gravity pushing down on us and how we can use our core to resist that, it becomes our own prop. So it becomes this constant tool that we have at our access at any one moment versus coming into plank and we kind of find ourselves after a while kind of like this. And we're still there, we're still doing it, but what if I understood that gravity was like these little hands pushing down on me and I could push up against it? So gravity becomes our friend in class rather than this kind of torture tool that we're always hearing, you know, gravity on the face and all this other stuff, and we see lines and wrinkles and all these things. What if we could really use gravity to our advantage? All right, number 11, a combination of strength and stretch simultaneously. We are taught in yoga to what? Counter pose, right? So you do a pose and then you have a counter pose. But what if every pose was its own counter pose? Think about that. What if every pose was its counter pose? What that means, though, and that requires, is for us to be stretching a muscle and strengthening a muscle at the same time, to be moving functionally and appropriately in our joints, our pelvis, and our shoulders. So we'll do some movements this weekend that may kind of rock your brain a little bit and go, okay, this feels so wrong, but it feels different. Different, maybe not wrong, but different. And it's not bad, but it's just different. And we'll try to make sense of it as far as where we're moving from in positions. And you'll go, oh, okay, I'm sitting in my spine rather than moving from my hip. Or I'm overusing my upper back versus moving from my shoulders. And then really getting this idea of that long, lean muscle. And if we can stretch it and firm it together, you don't need a counter pose. You've just done the counter pose. That's the idea. Things become easier and more efficient. And yeah, you'll have devotionals and you'll have other things like that, but those are just bonuses then. So you don't have to spend as much time doing one simple thing, like warming up all class for back bends, just to feel like you can do up bow really, really good at the end of class. What if you could do up bow as the second or third thing in class and feel really successful in it and actually move in it? And so when we look at the body in a functional way, those things become possible. Kind of cool. All right, understanding the roles of muscles, bones, ligaments, nerves, tendons, fascia in the relationship with energy in the body. And if someone would have said that to me about 10 years ago, I would have probably screamed and ran out of my yoga teacher training. Because not only did I not understand, and I'm pretty sure I didn't even know that there were ligaments in the body, but then energy and tendons and what the heck was fascia and all this stuff. It was like, I always joke, and my teacher trainers have heard me said this, I'm pretty sure my anatomy section in my yoga teacher training was in French. I don't remember any of it. It was all a blur. It made no sense to me whatsoever. And so I hope that as we review some of these things, we won't go over everything, but more core specific. You'll be able to go back and look at these books like Key Muscles of Hatha Yoga and go, oh, that's what they're talking about. Or, oh, I don't know if I agree with that. So it'll hopefully start turning some questions in your mind for you so that you get excited about anatomy again. And it never hurts to hear things a second, a third, a fourth time. Okay, so then why? Why? For those of you who know me, I love the word why. Why? Why are you doing this move? Why is that helping you? Why are you here tonight? So when we ask the word why, it's not that we're trying to criticize, it's that we're trying to understand more. So when my students come in and they're like, do I really have to fill out this waiver form? I said, do you really want me to help you? Yeah. Yeah, I do need to know that you had a knee replacement. It is valid that it was 10 years ago. Yeah, I do need to know that your back hurts, or I do need to know that you're on migraine medication. So all of these things do matter, even if you're not exactly sure, like, oh, this, and this, because some people want that list of poses to do to make them better. You at least have that background knowledge now of saying, okay, maybe this isn't a good idea for you, or let's maybe take a look at that. And we will look at movements. And I'm going to pose to you some things in some of these movements. We have an 80-page manual. I might ask you why. Why could this be a better option? Why are we doing this? Why shouldn't we do this? And so we can hopefully get these wheels turning. Am I really helping or hurting students? Am I really moving them closer towards balance and wellness or closer towards dis-ease? And I'm just not talking cancer and the common cold. Dis-ease. We all have dis-ease. And the reality is what I've recognized is over the last 10 years of my own yoga practice, some of the things I was engaging in my yoga practice were bringing me closer towards dis-ease. It was my yoga practice that was bringing me some harm in my body, and I didn't recognize it. And that why question kept coming up, and it was like, oh. And so hopefully we can start to turn on some of those light bulbs.